Hey folks, it's me, TheTacticalBrit, and I think it's time to talk about the state of Battlefield 5 and the upcoming update that's coming to the game later this year, which will likely be probably the last or maybe second to last update we'll see for 2019. It's probably going to be a bit of a break into 2020 because, of course, developers will be away for Christmas, they'll come back, and things tend to start pretty slow. In fact, in the history of Battlefield, I think, January to February is some of the quietest periods in Battlefield games. And I've got to say, the launch of the Pacific was a successful thing. The launch really did revitalize the game, I think, in a lot of places. But today I wanted to talk about the overarching state of the game. Where are we at with this? What is the future? Is there a future? How's it going to look? And really dive on into the current affairs of the game and things that are going on. Now, while I think it's safe to say the Pacific did revitalize Battlefield 5, I don't necessarily believe that it restored Battlefield 5. It was a very good DLC. It came with a solid update that made some significant improvements, but prior to what was there was already in a pretty bad way. So it took it from a bad way to a medium way, like an okay way, but that real new content drop is what I think made most people really appreciate the update. But that kind of appreciation can fade, and once that does, and that kind of, nostalgia of the good time, the good update disappears, you get what's left. And I'll be honest with you, the Pacific for me is kind of like this. You can take a new engine and put it in an old car, but ultimately the car is still going to be old, still have bits broken in it, it's going to have things that aren't working, and it's just not the same. And that analogy applies here too. You can put Battlefield in an entirely different new setting with new weapons and, new things going on, but ultimately there's still going to be overarching problems that are causing the game to be, at least in my opinion, not that great. And I think it's about time we address some of this. At a very large overarching level, you still have huge issues in the game, like team balance. You still have some bugs and performance issues that are putting people away from the game. And it's difficult to say, really, but I don't really think there is an overarching issue, like this is the 100% bad thing. I think Battlefield 5 is suffering from what I call the Rainbow Six Siege syndrome. Now, Rainbow Six actually lost a lot of players not too long ago. It was probably about a year and a half back now, actually. And the reason for that was not because one specific thing was broken in Siege. There wasn't one thing you could go, yep, that's I'm never playing the game because of this. It was just because there were so many small issues and so many small problems here and there that you kind of feel overwhelmed with them, and it can get quite exhausting when you encounter small issues over and over again. Examples of small issues are things like bullets not registering, things like, getting clipped into some terrain, dusting of things like missiles, just the kind of stuff that frustrates you, and even balancing problems. For example, the way vehicles are balanced currently. I think most people would say that the tanks are still not in a very good place. Hopefully that changes soon. These kinds of things are things that will put you off of the game. It feels like you're constantly being laser beamed across a map, for example. That's the kind of thing that can put you off of the game. And that kind of syndrome exists in Battlefield at the moment, at least in my opinion it does anyway, because I don't think there is an overarching problem with the game. I think probably performance is the closest thing to say, this is the one thing that definitely needs working on. But for the most part, I think it's just so many small/medium things, the lack of team balancing, the lack of, bugs in some locations. Some of the issues that you get in the game at the moment are not things that you would necessarily define as game-breaking, but when you get them stacked on top of each other over and over again across a couple of games, it gets frustrating, it gets tiresome. And I think a lot of people, including myself, are suffering from that Battlefield burnout. I constantly play the game, or I play the game relatively a decent amount, but over the last few weeks I've not enjoyed it. I keep thinking, well, I've just been killed by an MMG again, or, oh, an anti-material rifle, or, yay, I was in a tank, but I got instantly murdered by a single assault player. And these are the kind of things that, they just keep cropping up over and over again, and they can make an individual player quit the game pretty easily, in my opinion. And this isn't to put a dampener on the game. I'm really impressed with what DICE have managed to achieve over the last few months, especially when they're trying their best to take something that wasn't in the best of ways and doing their best to really improve it, really do so much better than they possibly could have in the past, and I think that's an impressive feat. I just think there are still some things that make it really hard to enjoy that feat, and some things about it that I would like to see changed. And there are some other things as well, like attrition can be frustrating, the lack of support for Battlefield Firestorm can be frustrating. And all of these problems are very subjective and scalable. Like, these problems do objectively exist, but to some people something like team balancing could be a much larger issue to them. You know, I'm kind of taking things that everything is sort of medium to a little bit bothersome, and some people might find that very bothersome, and I think that's something that's worth mentioning too. I guess the reason I say all of this is just because the game feels like it's almost being held back. You know, it's in an okay place. I don't think it's necessarily in a terrible place. I think the Pacific was a great first or, you know, second step in a good direction for the game, and hopefully a positive direction for the franchise. But with all of that said, it's still got a long way to go. Like, there are still overarching problems in the game that cause people to leave, and honestly, if I'm being brutally honest, I'm actually not that worried about 5.2, and I actually want to talk about that. People have been up in arms about 5.2, talking about, you know, whether or not this is going to be good for the game, what exactly is it going to entail, what issues are they having, and a lot of it does revolve around the conversation with damage over range and some of the stuff there. But I'll be honest with you, I'm actually happy and willing to try a brand new time to kill. I know they're kind of stepping away from that a little bit. They're trying to do like a hybrid thing now, which they announced in the stream. But I feel like some of the issues with the game in terms of balancing, you know, I still get killed from STGs from miles away. You know, I get assault rifle fully autoed from what feels like it shouldn't be an assault rifle range. You know, I still get murdered from MG42s across the map. And these are the kind of problems that I think that 5.2 wanted to address, and I'll be honest with you, I'm welcome to it. I don't want them to do an extreme time to kill overhaul, because I think that certainly damages the meta, and I don't think it's necessarily something people were looking for. But what I am happy for them to do is rejig components, keep rebalancing weapons, you know, happily tweak damage over range, because I feel like damage over range is far too high as it presently stands. Something I will say, and this is something that's bothering me individually, I don't think this is a universal problem, is that I feel as though I'm being killed a lot by things that are just kind of out of my control. You know, like, there's only so much I can do as an individual player before I get, you know, murdered from across the map, or, you know, hit from a shell from like 600 million years away, or, you know, just dive bombed by a plane. I don't think that's necessarily, you know, Battlefield's fault. I'm not saying this is an issue with the game. I more also think that the new Pacific DLC is a very different kind of Battlefield 5. To the point where the map design's a lot more open, you know, there is significantly less cover in some spaces, but it's still pretty good. In fact, cover was one of the things that I praised in the past. But I think the game almost feels kind of disjointed in the sense that this new DLC has brought across all of these new and different things, but the rest of the game probably hasn't caught up to what it's trying to do, you know? I think damage over range is a fantastic example of that when places... in a lot of places, actually, you get killed by machine guns and assault rifles at ranges that just don't seem right. You know, if I'm standing there with a semi-automatic rifle trying to shoot somebody at range and then just instantly end up getting absolutely laser beamed across the map, I feel almost kind of cheated. And that's why I'm excited for 5.2, but honestly, hands down, the biggest change is going to be tank damage. Tanks actually are being revitalized. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's estimated they will take 10 Panzerfaust to take down a tank now, if you don't land any critical hits. Of course, that'll be less if you land critical hits, but it seems as though these tanks are actually going to have some kind of life to them again. You know, they'll actually be able to defend themselves, and that's a change I'm all for. But anywho, I feel like that's it for this video. I didn't really want to say, you know, here are all these issues, here's how you fix them. I more kind of wanted to express a concern about the game. I think Battlefield 5 is not in the best of states in the world, but I don't necessarily believe it's in a bad state. I think there can be some burnout from the game that happens when you have some of these smaller issues, and I hope it's something that's addressed soon. But anywho, folks, that's about it from me today, the Tactical Brit. Let me know how you're feeling about the game as we close out 2019. I hope you guys are all enjoying the festive period, and as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.